Hey folks, happy Thursday. Welcome to Advisory. I hope you're all doing well. To start off today's advisory, I mustache you a question. Get it? What do you think are the main big national global events that have happened during your lifetime, and what were the effects of those big events? The first thing that probably pops into your mind is that little spring break we had that ended up being a lot longer than just 2 extra weeks. That definitely qualifies, right? There was a lot of people affected. Many of you were affected, either directly or indirectly. Because of just the way that the world is, there are always going to be these big generation-defining events that are stuck in our memories forever. I know for me, it was September 11th, 2001. I was in 4th grade. I remember my teacher coming into the classroom very somber-faced, very serious in a way that he hadn't before, and said that there was something terrible that had happened in our country and that we were going to have to talk to our parents about it. And we did. We went home, and I remember watching it on the tiny little TV that we had, the images that I couldn't really understand or comprehend even in 4th grade. It's one of those events that later people think back and say that everyone remembers where they were when that thing happened. In those events, even if you're not directly involved, for instance, I didn't know anybody personally that was affected by the September 11th attacks. These major news stories and big tragedies have a way of affecting everyone in different sorts of ways. One of these events, at least in America, was the 1986 explosion of the Challenger space shuttle. And it is that situation exactly that serves as a historical context for the play Love and Negotiations. For more information about this play and the events that inspired it, we go now to our field correspondent, Mr. Hall, who is live with Miss Culinary, our director of film and theater. Mr. Hall? Thanks, Mr. Hall. I'm here with Miss Culinary of theater and film fame, the director of the new play Love and Negotiations. Miss Culinary, how are things going in the WTW theater department?
They're doing really well. We're coming back from the pandemic, obviously. So the program was strong before the pandemic. And then, as we all experienced, we had a blip for a year and a half, couple years. Last year was our transitional year, which we did really well. My goal was to put on an exceptional show. We did a fall play, She Kills Monsters. Mr. Spropoulos, our tech director at the time, did that in the fall. And then we did our UIL play, and we did really well. We went to competition, and all I said was, I want to compete with Booker T. Washington, and we did. We got cut after that, but we did really well. This year, we want to try to tackle a conceptual musical review, and so that's what Love and Negotiations is.
Tell me a little bit about what the plot is, what we can expect from a review type show.
Yeah, so a musical review is basically where it's not just a bunch of random songs. It's housed under a theme. I went a little bit further because I have so many students last year, they were like, when are we going to do a musical? When are we going to do a musical? And I said, I don't think we're ready. We just yet to do a full-blown musical. As I've told all my students, that takes about 3 months of after-school rehearsal. You have to really build that type of program, and you have to have a lot of buy-in from all of your students because it's a huge commitment. Takes a ton of rehearsal, takes a ton of focus, it takes a ton of talent. You've got to be able to sing, dance, and act. So Love and Negotiations, basically it was inspired by, if any of you watch film, Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread, after I saw that film, which was a film about the negotiating of love and how really it's about two worlds. Oftentimes when you meet somebody or whatever, it's two worlds sort of colliding together, and how do you navigate through that very messy process, the messy process of love, and still try to come out ahead. And so it came from that. It also came from Kate Bush. If any of you watch Stranger Things, she's had a surge, a comeback. Kate Bush, she was really popular in the 80s when I was in elementary school. And it goes, coming up that hill, I've been running up that net. Yes, exactly, that song, yeah. So everybody, all my students know that song, and I was like, cool. And they were telling me, they were like, Miss, you gotta watch Stranger Things, and you gotta watch Euphoria, which I watched Euphoria, I was a little scared of it. But anyway, I totally binge watch Stranger Things. And so stylistically, our musical is set kind of in that moody, interesting kind of world. And so it came from Kate Bush's song Cloud Busting, which is a story about a father and a daughter that are really close. So the story starts with a family. We meet all the family characters. By scene 2, we recognize that there is a strong relationship between the father and the daughter. And then unfortunately, by scene 3, he's an astronaut. By scene 3, we figure out, in a living room, we figure out that he is waiting to go out into space on a space shuttle called the Challenger, which was in 1986. So we pull from real American history. And so all the family is about to watch watch the space shuttle go off and from Cape Canaveral in Florida. And so unfortunately, spoiler, the space shuttle exploded in real life. And myself, I was in elementary school and we watched it on television. It was horrible. It was awful. But all the students were like, in order to write a good story, we need conflict. And so she unfortunately loses her father in the space shuttle explosion. Then jump forward to about 5 years later, and we have the 2 lead characters. They're very, very intelligent. They're at a science and tech school and like math in New York City. And our main protagonist, female, who's played by Leslie Moore, her name is, in the show, her name is Sylvia. She's depressed. She's reeling emotionally from losing her father 5 years prior, and she hasn't really gotten over it. So oftentimes the way new relationships come into our life and love comes in, it kind of just is disruptive, but then it heals us. It should. And so she meets Amari, and he's very interested in her. This is played by Logan Deanda. And basically there's comedy, but they fall in love. And then, Logan is also very intelligent. His father was creating an artificial intelligence program at MIT, which is in Boston, but then he leaves it. He completely lets it go. And then Logan's character is really pissed off. He's upset because he knew that his family would become famous. And so what he decides to do is he decides to pick up the program and try to record the intimate conversations of him and Sylvia, which is a total betrayal. And she finds out about it, and they have a huge fight. Just like in love, we have conflict. And so she doesn't know whether to trust him anymore. And so he does the right thing in the end, and we have a nice ending. Love moves forward in the end.
Love moves forward after much negotiations.
Right, exactly. And so the show is set from like 1981 to about 1990. So we're really excited too about all the costume design and all the stylistic choices that are going to show that it's from that time period. All the music is pop music, and it's pulled from the 80s, 90s, and from today.
Love
so
that.
it kind of has that modern feel as well. This is an original work. It's the first time I've ever written a musical with my students. So my advanced acting class is where we wrote the scenes. And even though I wrote it, it was inspired by them. And I'd write a scene, I would bring it back into class, and then we would edit it together. And so they were really kind of the driving force for the ideas. And then I just wrote it. So it's totally original. We're so excited. We really want to bring the community as well. So please bring your friends. Please bring your family. Everyone you know. It's only going to be $5 at the door. And the show is November 17th in the auditorium at 7 p.m.
November 17th in the auditorium at 7 p.m. Bring your friends. Come enjoy a live musical theater production put on by many of your friends and community members here at W.T. White.
Yes, and it's going to be a total fine arts collaboration. The art department, the orchestra, the band, the dance department, and theater. So everybody, it's almost a full-blown musical. So we're really excited about it. So please come and support.
Come out and support your friends, come out and support your community, and come out and support live music and live theater. Thank you, Ms. Culinary.
Peace.
We'll see you there. Back to you in the studio, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Man, that guy needs to shave. So the play explores the very personal impact that the explosion of the Challenger may have had on the families of those involved, but it also speaks to how we as a nation or we as a society or a world respond when something happens that is this tragic. When you go see the play, and I really hope you do, remember that it's November 17th, right here at W.T. White. I want you to understand fully the historical context in which it is laid. And so I'm going to go now to a news report from 1986, that fateful day, January 28th, when the Challenger exploded, to get a sense of what it was like, how confused, shocked, and dismayed that everyone was, and what sort of impact it left upon people that were directly and indirectly affected.
104%. Challenger, go at throttle up.
The Space Shuttle Challenger is destroyed just a little more than 1 minute after liftoff.
1 minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles.
All 7 astronauts on board are killed.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Tonight, reporting from Washington.
It is the worst disaster in the history of the American space program, and President Reagan has declared a week of mourning for the 7 astronauts, 5 men and 2 women, who lost their lives on their way into space this morning. Now, we know that many of you have heard the news many hours ago and may even have seen some of our extended coverage this afternoon. But many others of you, we surmise, have been at work, and thus we're going to spend virtually our entire broadcast this evening on what is not only a crushingly sad day for families, friends, and colleagues of the astronauts, but also an enormous shock to the manned space program, which before today had gone so well. Never before have American lives been lost in flight. We will try to answer many of your questions, but as of this evening, many questions remain unanswered. We begin at Cape Canaveral with ABC's John Quinones.
They gathered for what turned out to be their last meal at 6:48 this morning, the ceremonial breakfast. For months, they had trained together. Astronaut Ellison Onizuka from Hawaii, the star of this mission, New Hampshire schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe, mission commander Dick Scobie, pilot Michael Smith, astronauts Judith Resnick and Ronald McNair, and payload specialist Gregory Jarvis. After 3 days of delays, they appeared tired but quickly rejuvenated by applause as they headed for the launch pad.
Scobie, followed by mission specialist Judy Resnick, Ron McNair, and pilot Mike Smith, followed by Krista McAuliffe, teacher in space, and Ellison Onizuka, and payload specialist Greg Jarvis.
Final preparations before liftoff. The ground crew gives McAuliffe an apple for the teacher, and wishes of good luck. Initially, liftoff was scheduled for 9:38 this morning, but again there were problems. A hard freeze overnight left ice on the launch pad, a 2-hour delay, and then NASA discovers a faulty fire detector on board the shuttle, another hour's delay while it's replaced. Finally, the liftoff was set for 11:38. A crowd of some 500 spectators, including 18 visiting school children from McAuliffe's hometown of Concord, New Hampshire, waited anxiously and then counted down. The liftoff appeared flawless. The spectators, including Krista McAuliffe's parents, Grace and Edward Corrigan, watched proudly through tears of joy. 65 seconds into flight, NASA Control orders Commander Scobie to go to full power.
Challenger, go at throttle up. Challenger, go at throttle up.
Suddenly, an explosion.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
NASA loses all communication with Challenger, but the crowd still does not realize that something's gone wrong. Within seconds, Challenger disintegrates.
We have a report from the flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded.
For the spectators and Krista McAuliffe's parents, joy turns to confusion, worry, and a realization of tragedy. The $1.2 billion spaceship, its 7 crew members, and their satellite payload disappear.
I thought the flight was going fine. And then I heard them say major malfunction. And then the person beside me said it's exploded. And it was, I couldn't speak. It was...
Within minutes, emergency rescue teams parachuted in, converging on a search area 18 miles east of Cape Canaveral.
Debris continued to fall for 50 minutes and more. And obviously you can't send aircraft and ships into an area where debris is falling, where they themselves may be endangered.
Late this afternoon, after 6 hours of searching, NASA reports they found no survivors.
These searches have not revealed any evidence that the crew of Challenger survived.
Tonight, NASA and Cape Canaveral are in mourning. Tonight at Cape Canaveral, Vice President George Bush, accompanied by Senators Jake Garn and John Glenn, both former astronauts, expressed the nation's condolences to the families of the astronauts. Bush had a special message for American school children.
You must try to understand that spirit, bravery, and commitment are what make not only the space program, but all of life worthwhile. We must never, as people in our daily lives or as a nation, stop exploring, stop hoping, stop discovering. We must press on.
John Quinones, ABC News, Cape Canaveral.
That's all for now. Go now to the next slide and have the discussion there in preparation for seeing this play, which I, again, hope you will go see on November 17th. Thanks, be good to yourself and others, and I'll see you soon.